The rain hammered against the cracked asphalt like 1,000 angry fingers, each drop exploding into mist that clung to my skin. I could taste the city on my tongue, exhaust fumes, wet concrete, and something metallic that always seemed to linger in this part of town. My fingers trembled as I fumbled with my keys, the cold metal slipping twice before I managed to grip them properly. 3 double shifts this week. My body felt like it belonged to someone else, heavy and disconnected, moving through muscle memory alone. The diner's grease still clung to my uniform, and I could smell it mixing with the rain, old oil, burnt coffee, desperation. That's what poverty smells like. Desperation with a side of denial. I dropped my keys. Of course I did. They skittered under my beat-up Honda, disappearing into the darkness beneath. I wanted to cry. Just sit down on the wet pavement and let the rain wash away the exhaustion, the fear, the crushing weight of bills I couldn't pay. But crying didn't pay rent. Crying didn't put food on the table. So I got on my hands and knees. The ground was freezing, soaking through my thin pants immediately. I reached under the car, my fingers brushing through puddles and God knows what else. The parking garage was nearly empty at this hour. Just a few scattered vehicles and the hum of fluorescent lights that flickered overhead like dying stars. That's when I felt it. Not my keys. Something else. Something that didn't belong. My fingers closed around a small rectangular device, smooth and cold. I pulled it out, squinting at it in the dim light, black plastic, about the size of a matchbox, with a blinking red light that pulsed like a heartbeat. A tracker. Someone had put a tracker on my car. The realization hit me like ice water in my veins. My hands started shaking worse than before, but this time it wasn't from exhaustion. Fear tastes different than desperation. Sharper, more immediate. It crawled up my throat and made it hard to breathe. Who would track me? I was nobody. I had nothing. I worked at a diner, lived in a studio apartment with a radiator that only worked half the time, and my most valuable possession was a laptop I'd bought secondhand 3 years ago. Unless this wasn't about me at all. My mind raced back 3 weeks. The man who'd come into the diner. The one who'd sat in my section and ordered nothing but black coffee, watching the door like he was waiting for someone. He tipped me $100. $100 for 1 cup of coffee. I'd tried to give it back, told him it must be a mistake, but he'd just looked at me with eyes that held too many secrets and said, "You earned it." I'd been so grateful I hadn't asked questions. Stupid. So incredibly stupid. I stood up, the tracker clutched in my fist, my keys forgotten. Rain plastered my hair to my face, but I barely noticed. My phone was in my pocket, and I should call someone. The police. A friend. Anyone. But who would believe me? And what would I even say? Then I remembered something. A documentary I'd half-watched while folding laundry. Something about activists sending tracking devices to ridiculous places to make a point. They'd mailed one to Congress, another to some tech CEO's vacation home. The idea bloomed in my mind like dark flowers. If someone was tracking me, watching me, thinking they could follow my every move, maybe I could send them on a wild goose chase instead. Maybe I could buy myself time to figure out what the hell was happening. I pulled out my phone, water droplets scattering across the screen. My fingers moved almost automatically, searching for the nearest FedEx location that offered international shipping. There was one 6 blocks away, open until midnight. Canada. I'd send it to Canada. The thought made me almost laugh, a hysterical sound that caught in my throat. Some random address in Toronto. Let whoever was following me think I'd fled the country. Let them waste their time and resources chasing a ghost across the border. I found my keys wedged against the tire and drove to FedEx with my heart in my throat, checking my rearview mirror every 3 seconds. The streets were mostly empty, slick with rain that reflected neon signs in bleeding colors. Every car behind me felt like a threat. Every shadow held menace. The FedEx was fluorescent bright and nearly empty. A bored teenager worked the counter, barely looking up from his phone when I walked in. I filled out the shipping label with an address I found online, some random office building in Toronto. My hands still trembled as I sealed the small box, watching the tracker's red light blink one last time before cardboard enclosed it. "Express or standard?" the kid asked. "Express." I wanted that thing as far from me as possible. as fast as possible. He processed the payment, and I watched my emergency grocery money disappear into shipping fees. Worth it. Had to be worth it. I drove home through streets that felt different now. Threatening. Every dark window was an eye watching. Every parked car held invisible danger. My apartment building looked exactly the same as always. Crumbling brick. A door that didn't lock properly. Graffiti on the mailboxes, but now it felt exposed. Vulnerable, like me. I barely slept that night. Every sound made me jump, the pipes clanging, the couple upstairs arguing, the distant wail of sirens that never seemed to stop in this neighborhood. I kept thinking about that tracker, imagining it on a plane, crossing the border, taking my phantom location with it. Let them follow that. The next morning came too soon. My alarm shrieked at 5:30, and I dragged myself out of bed feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The diner needed me for the breakfast rush. Bills didn't care about mysterious tracking devices or sleepless nights. I was halfway through my shift, refilling coffee for a regular who never learned my name despite coming in every day for 2 years, when I noticed the car. Black. Expensive. So expensive it looked obscene, parked outside a diner where the special was meatloaf, and the coffee came in chipped mugs. It idled at the curb, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. But I could feel eyes on me, watching. The coffee pot trembled in my hand. "You okay, honey?" the regular asked, but his voice sounded far away, muffled by the blood pounding in my ears. The car door opened. A man stepped out, and the world seemed to tilt sideways. He was young, younger than I expected. Maybe early 30s, but there was nothing young about the way he moved. Each step was calculated, measured, carrying a weight that made other people on the sidewalk instinctively move aside without knowing why. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, perfectly tailored to a frame that suggested both power and danger. But it was his face that made my breath catch. Beautiful. Devastatingly, cruelly beautiful, in a way that felt almost offensive. Sharp jawline, dark hair styled with careless precision, and eyes. Even through the diner's grimy window, I could see his eyes. Dark. Intense. Fixed on me with the kind of focus that made my skin prickle. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, both broad-shouldered and alert, their eyes constantly scanning the street. One touched his ear, an earpiece. Security. Private security for a man who looked like he could buy and sell entire city blocks. They entered the diner, and the morning noise seemed to die. Conversations faltered. The cook dropped something in the kitchen with a clatter that made me jump. The beautiful man walked straight to the counter. Straight to where I stood, frozen, coffee pot still in hand, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. He sat down on a worn vinyl stool that had probably been there since the 80s. His guards positioned themselves by the door and window, professional and alert. No one else seemed to notice, or maybe they were all too scared to look directly at him. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. His cologne reached me, something expensive and dark, cedar and something else I couldn't name. It cut through the diner smell of bacon and burnt toast like a knife through butter. "Coffee," he said. His voice was quiet, dangerously quiet, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to command attention. Black. My hand shook as I reached for a clean mug. Well, cleanish. Nothing in this diner was truly clean. I poured, watching the dark liquid fill the cup, focusing on this one simple task because looking at him felt like staring into the sun. "You're wondering," he said softly, still not looking up from the coffee, "why I'm here." I hadn't asked, hadn't said anything, could barely breathe. "I'm wondering," he continued, and now his eyes lifted to mine, pinning me in place. "Why my tracker is currently flying over Ontario." The world stopped. Every sound cut out. The clatter of dishes, the sizzle of the griddle, the chatter of morning customers, all of it vanished into a void where there was only his eyes and my terror. He knew. He knew. And he was here. And I had been so incredibly stupid. My voice came out as barely a whisper. Don't lie to me." Still quiet. Still devastatingly calm, but underneath that calm was something else. Something that made my survival instincts scream. "You found it. Last night. Parking garage. Approximately 11:47 p.m. You held it in your hand for 3 minutes and 42 seconds before driving to FedEx. He knew everything. Had known everything, while I thought I was being clever. You shipped it express to 445 Wellington Street, West Toronto, a mailbox rental facility. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Something darker. Creative. I'll give you that. My fingers tightened around the coffee pot. I don't know who you are or what you want, but I don't have anything. I'm nobody. There's nothing. You're right. He picked up the coffee, took a sip, his eyes never leaving mine. You don't know who I am, but you're wrong about the rest. One of his guards stepped closer, handed him something. A photograph. He laid it on the counter between us. My blood turned to ice. It was him. The man from 3 weeks ago, the one who'd tipped me $100. But in this photo, he looked different. Desperate. Bloodied. Dead. Recognize him? The beautiful man's voice was so soft I had to lean in to hear it. Marcus Chen. He worked for me. Until he didn't. I shook my head, backing away. I just served him coffee. That's all. 1 coffee. He stole from me. Each word was precisely placed, like pieces on a chessboard. $3 million. And before he died, he mentioned a waitress, said he'd hidden something, said he'd given something to someone who'd never suspect. No. The word burst out of me. No, he didn't give me anything. Just a tip. Just money. And I needed it. I needed it so badly, but that's all it was. I swear, that's all. I believe you. The words stopped my spiral of panic. He believed me? I've had you watched for 3 weeks. Every movement, every purchase, every conversation. He leaned forward slightly, and I could smell his cologne again, mixing with the diner's grease in a way that shouldn't work but somehow did. You're exactly what you appear to be. A woman working 3 jobs to survive, no hidden bank accounts, no secret life, no connections to my world whatsoever. Then why? My voice cracked. Why the tracker? Why are you here? Something shifted in his expression. Something I couldn't read, but that made the air between us feel charged. Dangerous. Because Marcus lied to me, and liars in my world die. He stood up, and I realized how tall he was, how much space he commanded just by existing. But before he died, he said your name. And in my experience, dying men don't waste their last words. He reached into his jacket, and I flinched. But he only pulled out a card, black, heavy stock. A phone number embossed in silver. You're going to think about our conversation. You're going to remember everything about that night. And if you remember anything at all that might help me understand why a dead man said your name, you're going to call this number. He placed the card on the counter next to the photograph. And in the meantime, his voice dropped even lower, intimate and terrifying. You're going to keep that tracker situation to yourself. No police, no friends, no social media posts about the crazy thing that happened, because the people who want what Marcus stole, they're not as patient as I am. He turned to leave, his guards moving with him in synchronized precision. Wait, I heard myself say, my voice stronger than I felt. What's your name? He paused at the door, looking back over his shoulder. The morning light caught his face, making him look almost angelic. Almost. Dante. Just the one word. And yours is Mara, 26 years old, birthday in March. You take your coffee with too much sugar and not enough cream. Your favorite color is blue, but you own nothing blue because you can't afford to buy things based on preference. You're 3 months behind on your electric bill and 2 months behind on rent. You have $17 in your checking account and a maxed-out credit card you use only for emergencies. He knew everything, every humiliating detail of my poverty, my failure, my desperate, struggling existence. And now, he said, his eyes holding mine across the diner, you belong to me. The door closed behind him, the black car pulled away, the world started making noise again. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only stare at the black card on the counter, at the photograph of a dead man who'd somehow trapped me in something I didn't understand. My manager yelled something about customers waiting. The regular asked for his check. The morning continued around me like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I picked up the card. It was warm from being in his jacket. And that small detail felt obscenely intimate. You belong to me. What the hell did that mean? I made it through the rest of my shift on autopilot, my hands moving through familiar motions while my mind spun in useless circles. Pour coffee. Take orders. Smile at customers who never really saw me. But that black card burned in my pocket like a live coal, impossible to forget. You belong to me. The words echoed in my head with every step, every breath. What kind of person said something like that? What kind of world had I stumbled into where a man could track someone, corner them at their workplace, and claim ownership like it was the most natural thing in the world? I should have gone to the police. That's what normal people did when threatened by dangerous men in expensive suits. But every time I reached for my phone, I remembered his eyes, the casual way he'd recited my financial failures, the photograph of Marcus Chen's dead face. And I remembered his warning, the people who want what Marcus stole, they're not as patient as I am. Patience. He'd called himself patient, like tracking me was a kindness, like invading every aspect of my life was restraint. By the time my shift ended, exhaustion had settled into my bones so deeply I could barely feel my feet. The afternoon sun was too bright after the diner's dim interior, making me squint as I walked to my car. I checked underneath it first, a habit I'd apparently developed overnight, but found nothing. Of course, there was nothing. He didn't need to hide trackers anymore. He'd made his point spectacularly clear. The drive home took me through neighborhoods that shifted from bad to worse. Boarded windows. Graffiti that wasn't art, just anger. People sitting on stoops with eyes that had stopped hoping for anything better. I used to think I was working my way out of this place. 3 jobs, constant hustle, telling myself it was temporary. Now I wondered if Dante saw the same thing when he looked at me, just another broken thing in a broken neighborhood. I parked in my building's lot and sat for a moment, gathering courage to face my apartment. The building super had left another notice on my door yesterday, bright pink paper screaming about overdue rent. My neighbor's television bled through the thin walls at all hours. The hallway always smelled like cigarettes and mildew, but it was mine. The only space in the world that belonged to me. Except it didn't, did it? Not really. Not when someone like Dante could buy my entire building with whatever he kept in his wallet for emergencies. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step an effort. My body was starting to rebel. 3 jobs, terrible sleep, constant stress. How long could a person run on empty before they just stopped? The pink notice was still there, mocking me. I tore it down and unlocked my door. The apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Tiny, worn, clean despite the age of everything, because cleanliness was free and I had my pride even if I had nothing else. My secondhand furniture, my thrift store dishes, my life measured in things other people had thrown away. I dropped my bag and collapsed onto the couch. A lumpy thing I'd found on the curb 3 years ago. The black card fell out of my pocket, landing face up on the coffee table. Silver numbers catching the light. I stared at it for a long time, then I got up and made myself move. Shower, food, normal things, human things. Pretend today was just another day in a long line of difficult days. The shower was lukewarm. The water heater struggled this time of month. But I stood under it anyway, letting it wash away the diner smell, the fear sweat, the feeling of Dante's eyes on me, except that feeling didn't wash away. It clung to my skin like his cologne had clung to the air between us. I was toweling my hair when someone knocked on my door. My heart stopped. 3 firm knocks, deliberate, patient. I stood frozen, water dripping down my back. Every horror movie I'd ever seen playing in my head. Nobody knocked on my door. I had no friends who visited, no family who cared. The super just left notices. 3 more knocks, same rhythm, same terrible patience. I grabbed my phone, finger hovering over 911, crept to the door, looked through the peephole. A man stood in my hallway, not Dante. One of his guards, the one who'd handed him the photograph. Broad shoulders, expensive suit. Face like carved stone, he held a box. I didn't open the door. "Miss Reyes," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the thin wood. I'm not here to harm you. Mr. Dante sent me to deliver something. Leave it, I called back, hating how my voice shook. Just leave it and go. I have instructions to wait until you've opened it. I don't want anything from him. A pause. Then, surprisingly, something almost like sympathy in his voice. Miss Reyes, I'm going to stand here until you open this door, or until Mr. Dante tells me otherwise. It's cold in this hallway. The sooner you take the box, the sooner I can leave. I looked down at myself, still in my towel, hair dripping, every inch of me screaming vulnerability. But he was right. He'd wait. Men like him were paid to wait, to follow orders, to be immovable objects. I threw on clothes, jeans, a sweater, and opened the door just enough to reach through. Give it to me. He handed over the box. It was heavier than I expected, wrapped in plain brown paper. His eyes flickered over my apartment, taking in details, and I hated him for it. Hated that someone else was cataloging my poverty, adding it to whatever file they kept on me. One more thing. He reached into his jacket. I stepped back, ready to slam the door, but he only pulled out an envelope. Thick. The kind that held either very good news or very bad news. What is it? I don't know. I follow orders, Miss Reyes. I don't ask questions. He set it on top of the box. Have a good evening. He walked away, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. I waited until I heard the building's front door close before I brought everything inside and locked every lock I had. The box sat on my coffee table like a coiled snake. I opened the envelope first. Money. Cash. $100 bills bound in neat stacks. I counted with trembling fingers. $5,000. $5,000. Like it was nothing. Like buying off a waitress's desperation was just another Tuesday transaction. A note card was tucked between the bills. Heavy cardstock. Masculine handwriting. For your rent and bills. This isn't charity. Consider it an advance on services you'll provide. Services. What services? What did he think I could possibly offer him? I set the money aside, too angry to appreciate it, too desperate to refuse it, and opened the box. Clothes. Designer clothes. I recognized some of the labels from magazines I'd flipped through at the grocery store while waiting in line. A dress. Dark blue. He'd said blue was my favorite. The fabric felt like water between my fingers. So soft it seemed impossible. Shoes. Real leather. The kind that molded to your feet instead of giving you blisters. Underwear. I dropped those immediately, my face burning. He'd sent me underwear. Expensive underwear that probably cost more than my entire current wardrobe. At the bottom of the box, another note. Tomorrow night. 8 p.m. The address is on the back. Wear the blue. I flipped the card over. An address in the part of the city where people like me didn't go, where buildings had doormen and parking garages and the kind of security that asked questions. He was insane. He had to be insane. You didn't just summon people like they were employees. You didn't track them, invade their lives, and then expect them to show up in a dress you'd bought them. I should refuse. Should take his money and his clothes and throw them in the dumpster. Should block his number, change my shifts, disappear into the city's masses. But even as I thought it, I knew I wouldn't. Because he'd been right about everything else. The $17 in my account. The overdue bills. The desperate, clawing fear that I'd end up on the streets, another invisible person the city stepped over without seeing. $5,000 would keep me afloat for months, would give me breathing room I hadn't had in years. And maybe if I went, if I listened to whatever he wanted, I could figure out how to get out of this, how to convince him I was useless, how to make myself so boring, so ordinary, that he'd lose interest and move on to more important things. I held the dress up to the fading light from my window. It was beautiful, the kind of beautiful I'd never imagined touching, let alone wearing. For just a moment, I let myself imagine it, walking into some expensive restaurant or whatever place he'd summoned me to, wearing something that actually fit properly, that made me look like I belonged. The fantasy died quickly. I didn't belong. Not in his world, not anywhere near a man who spoke about ownership like it was his right. But I'd go. God help me, I'd go. Because poverty makes you do things pride says you shouldn't. Because fear is a better motivator than dignity. Because somewhere in the last 24 hours, my life had stopped being mine, and I didn't know how to take it back. I spent the next day in a haze of anxiety and terrible sleep. Called in sick to my evening shift at the diner. The first time I'd called in sick in 2 years. Used some of Dante's money to pay my rent in cash, watching the super's eyebrows rise when I handed over the bills. Took the pink notice down and threw it away, feeling a satisfaction that immediately curdled into guilt. This was what he wanted, to make me dependent, to tie me to him with money and fear until I couldn't remember what freedom felt like. By 7 p.m., I was staring at myself in my bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. The dress fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd known my size, probably down to the inch. It hugged curves I usually hid under baggy clothes, made my skin look less tired, made me look like someone who mattered. The shoes were torture, beautiful torture, and I wobbled in them like a newborn deer. My hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, hung loose around my shoulders because nothing else seemed to fit the dress. I looked expensive, like a convincing forgery of someone important. The address was 40 minutes across the city by bus. I couldn't afford a cab, wouldn't afford a cab, even with his money burning in my pocket. The bus was crowded with evening commuters, and I felt their eyes on me. The dress was all wrong for public transportation. Too nice, too out of place, just like me. The neighborhood shifted as we traveled, getting cleaner, brighter, safer with each stop. Buildings grew taller, cars grew shinier, people on the sidewalks moved with the confidence of those who'd never worried about rent. I got off at a stop near the address and walked the last 3 blocks. My feet already hurt. The evening air was cold, and I hadn't thought to bring a jacket. Didn't own one nice enough for this dress anyway. The building was everything I'd expected and worse. Glass and steel. A doorman in an actual uniform. Lighting that looked like art. The kind of place where my old clothes would have gotten me escorted out before I reached the elevator. But in this dress, the doorman smiled. "Good evening, miss. Name?" "Mara Reyes. I'm expected." He checked his tablet, nodded. "Penthouse, mister. Dante is waiting." Of course he had the penthouse. Where else would a man like him live? The elevator was mirrored, forcing me to watch my own fear reflected back from every angle. My makeup, minimal, unpracticed, already looked smudged. The dress that had seemed so perfect in my dim apartment now felt like a costume. I was a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. The elevator climbed. My ears popped. My heart raced. When the doors opened, they revealed a private foyer, dark wood. Real art on the walls, a door at the end that stood slightly ajar. I stepped out on shaking legs. The elevator closed behind me with a soft chime that sounded like a trap snapping shut. "Come in, Mara," Dante's voice called from inside. "I've been waiting." I walked forward because there was nothing else to do. Pushed open the door, stepped into another world. The penthouse was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city spread out below like scattered jewels. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was clean lines and careful placement, the home of someone who controlled every detail of their environment. Dante stood by the windows, his back to me, silhouetted against the city lights. He wore dark slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Casual, comfortable. Devastatingly attractive in a way that made my mouth go dry. He turned as I entered, and his eyes traveled over me slowly, thoroughly, like he was inspecting a purchase. "You wore the blue," he said, and there was satisfaction in his voice. "Good." I lifted my chin, clinging to whatever pride I had left. "You didn't give me much choice." "There's always a choice, Mara." He moved closer, each step deliberate. "You could have burned the dress, kept the money and disappeared, run to the police despite my warning." He stopped just in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne again. "But you didn't. You're here. Wearing what I bought you. That was your choice." He was right, and I hated him for it. "Why am I here?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "What do you want from me?" "Dinner," he said simply. "I want to have dinner with you." Dinner. The word hung in the air between us, absurd in its normalcy, as if men like him had dinner with women like me, as if this was a date instead of whatever twisted game he was playing. You tracked me, invaded my privacy, paid my bills, and bought me clothes. I gestured at the dress, anger finally cutting through fear. So you could have dinner? Yes. No elaboration, no explanation. Just that single word, delivered with the confidence of someone who expected the world to arrange itself around his desires. He moved past me, and I caught his scent again, cedar and something darker. Something that made my pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with a traitorous awareness I didn't want to name. The dining area was set for 2. Candles flickered on a table that probably cost more than my car. Through an open door, I could see the kitchen where someone moved. A chef, I realized. He'd hired a private chef for this dinner. Sit, Dante said, pulling out a chair. I didn't move. I don't understand what's happening. Then let me explain. He remained standing by the chair, waiting with that infinite patience he'd mentioned. Marcus Chen was more than an employee. He was family. Or I thought he was. When family betrays you in my world, there are consequences. But before those consequences, there are questions. He gestured to the chair again. This time I sat, if only because my feet were screaming in these beautiful, terrible shoes. Dante took the seat across from me. The chef appeared with the first course. Something artfully arranged on pristine white plates. I couldn't have named it if my life depended on it. For 3 weeks I've had you watched, he continued as if discussing something as mundane as the weather. Every moment catalogued, every interaction recorded, looking for any sign that Marcus passed you something. Money, information, anything that would explain why his last words were your name. The food sat untouched between us. I couldn't imagine eating, not with my stomach in knots, not with those dark eyes studying my every reaction. I found nothing. You're exactly what you appear to be. A woman drowning slowly, working herself to death for pennies. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite sympathy. Something more complicated. Do you know what I realized yesterday, Mara? While watching you scrub tables at that diner for the 3rd consecutive hour? I shook my head mutely. That Marcus wasn't talking about what he'd given you. He was talking about what he'd taken from you. The words made no sense. He didn't take anything. I never saw him again after that night. Not from you directly. Dante leaned forward, candlelight catching the sharp planes of his face. But from your future, your potential. He saw you, probably exactly how I saw you, and realized something valuable. I'm not valuable. I'm nobody. Stop saying that. The command came sharp and sudden, the first real edge in his voice. You diminish yourself with every breath. It's tiresome. Heat rushed to my face, shame and anger mixing into something volatile. You don't get to tell me how to speak about myself. You don't know anything about me except what you've stolen by spying. I know you work 80 hours a week and still can't make rent. I know you haven't bought new clothes in 2 years. I know you eat 1 meal a day so you can save money. I know you applied to college 3 times and never attended because you couldn't afford it. His voice remained level, each fact delivered like a blade. I know you're 26 years old and you've never been anywhere, done anything, had anything that wasn't someone else's garbage first. Tears burned behind my eyes. I would not cry, would not give him that. I also know, he continued, his voice dropping lower, that you're smarter than anyone in that diner. That you teach yourself programming languages from library books. That you solve complex problems for fun in notebooks you hide under your mattress. That you're wasting away in poverty when you should be. He stopped himself, jaw tightening. Should be what? The question came out as a whisper. More. Just that. You should be more than what that neighborhood allows you to be. I picked up my fork, if only to have something to do with my hands. The food was probably incredible, but it tasted like ash in my mouth. This is insane. You can't just decide someone should be more and then, what? Buy them? Claim them? Why not? No shame in the question, pure curiosity. I have resources you'll never access on your own. Opportunities that would take you decades to earn, if you survived long enough. I could change your life with a phone call. In exchange for what? Because there was always an exchange. Always a price. What do you really want from me, Dante? He was quiet for a long moment, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. When he finally spoke, his words were careful, measured. Marcus told me about a woman who reminded him of his sister, someone kind despite having every reason to be bitter, someone who smiled at him like he was human, not a criminal. His fingers drummed once against the table. He was sentimental. It got him killed. But before he died, he said I should find you. Said you deserved better than what life had given you. So this is... what? Charity? Fulfilling a dead man's wish? No. The word came fast, sharp. This is entirely selfish. My heart hammered against my ribs. I don't understand. I know. He stood abruptly, moving to the windows. The city sprawled below, millions of lights, millions of lives, all of them tiny and distant from up here. I've built an empire on violence and fear. I've done things that would horrify you. I am not a good man, Mara. I want that understood from the beginning. Then why? Because I saw you. He turned back, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Something raw, hungry. I saw you on those surveillance feeds, and I couldn't look away. The way you move through the world like you're apologizing for existing, the way you're kind to people who don't deserve it, the way you're drowning and still trying to save yourself. He crossed the space between us in 3 strides, suddenly close, suddenly overwhelming. I pushed my chair back, standing on instinct, and he stopped just short of touching me. I want to keep you, he said simply. Not as a possession, not as a transaction, but as something that belongs in my life. Something clean in all this darkness. That's insane, I breathed. You don't even know me. I know enough. His hand lifted, hovering near my face but not quite touching. I know you found my tracker and instead of going to the police, you sent it on a ridiculous journey to Canada. I know you're clever enough to see the trap, but desperate enough to walk into it anyway. I know you're terrified right now, but still standing your ground. His fingers brushed my cheek, featherlight. I should have pulled away. Every instinct screamed to run. I didn't move. I can give you everything, he said softly. Safety. Security. A life where you never have to scrub another table or smile at another man who looks through you like you're invisible. All I ask is that you stay close. That you let me... He paused, searching for words. That you let me take care of you. You mean control me. Yes. No hesitation. No pretty lies. I won't pretend otherwise. I'm a possessive man, Mara. What's mine, I keep. What I protect, I own. I'm not yours. Not yet. His thumb traced my jawline, and I hated how my body responded. How warmth pooled low in my stomach, despite everything. But you will be. You're insane. I stepped back, breaking contact. This whole thing is insane. I'm leaving. I made it 3 steps before he spoke again. If you leave now, you leave with nothing. No money, no protection. And the people looking for what Marcus stole? They're not as patient as I am. They've been watching you too. Ice flooded my veins. What? Did you think I was the only one who knew about Marcus's last words? He moved to a table, picked up a tablet, and held it out to me. Look. The screen showed surveillance footage. Grainy, dark, but clear enough to recognize my building, my street. A black van parked across from my apartment. Men watching. They've been there for 2 days, Dante said quietly, waiting to see if you lead them to whatever Marcus hid. So far, I've kept them at bay. Made it clear you're under my protection. But if you walk away from me tonight, that protection ends. My legs felt weak. I sat down hard, staring at the footage. This can't be real. It's very real. Marcus stole from some extremely dangerous people who make me look like a saint. He set the tablet aside. They'll take you, question you, and when they realize you don't know anything, they won't just let you go. Why would they think I know anything? Because Marcus said your name. That's enough. He crouched in front of me, bringing his eyes level with mine. You're in this now, whether you want to be or not. The only choice you have is who protects you. The tears I'd been fighting finally escaped. Hot tracks down my face. I didn't ask for this. I didn't do anything. I know. His voice gentled. Life isn't fair, Mara. You of all people should know that by now. He was right, and I hated him for it. Hated how easily he'd cornered me. Hated that every exit he'd left open led to something worse than staying. What do you want from me? I whispered. Everything. No hesitation. I want you to move into one of my properties. Somewhere safe. Somewhere I can guarantee your protection. I want you to stop working yourself to death. I want you to let me provide for you. And in exchange, you stay close. You answer when I call. You don't lie to me. His hand covered mine. And you give me a chance to show you that this doesn't have to be a prison, that what I'm offering is freedom, not captivity. That's not how this works. You're describing a cage with better furnishings. Perhaps. He stood, pulling me up with him. But it's a cage where you'll survive, where you'll have time to breathe, to think, to become whatever you're capable of becoming. Out there? He gestured to the windows. You have maybe 6 months before you collapse from exhaustion, or those men in the van lose patience. My mind raced, looking for options that didn't exist. Every path led back to him. Every choice was an illusion. I need time, I finally said. I need to think. No. Firm. Final. You decide now, Mara. Stay or go. But choose knowing that leaving means you're on your own. The penthouse felt too small suddenly. Too warm, the walls closing in like a trap. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Trying to see past the beautiful face, the expensive clothes, the carefully controlled exterior. Trying to see what kind of man made offers like this. What kind of monster claimed ownership of another person and called it protection. But all I saw was certainty. Absolute conviction that this was right. That he was offering salvation instead of enslavement. Maybe he was insane, or maybe I was, because I heard myself say, okay. Okay? He repeated the word carefully. Yes, I'll stay. Let you protect me. Whatever this is. The words tasted like surrender, but I want rules. Boundaries. I'm not just some doll you can move around however you want. Something fierce and triumphant flashed across his face. Name them. My own space, my own room. You don't just walk in whenever you want. Agreed. I keep my phone, my independence. I can come and go, within reason. His voice hardened slightly. After what I've shown you, you have to understand that you can't just wander around unprotected. I wanted to argue, but he was right. The van, the men watching. This was real danger, not just his manipulation. Anything else? He asked. If I want to leave, if I change my mind, you let me go. Silence stretched between us. His jaw tightened. Something dark flickered in his eyes. No, he said finally. That's the one thing I can't promise. Once you're mine, Mara, I don't let go. That's not... I'll give you everything else. Safety, freedom within reason, respect for your boundaries. But walking away? He shook his head. That's not an option. Not until this is resolved. Not until you're safe. And when will that be? When I've found what Marcus stole. When I've dealt with the people hunting for it. When the threat is neutralized. And if that takes years, his smile was sharp, dangerous. Then you'll be mine for years. I should have run. Should have taken my chances with the men in the van. Should have done anything except what I did. Which was nod. Accept. Agree to become something I didn't have a name for yet. Good, Dante said, and his hand cupped my face with surprising gentleness. We'll move you tomorrow. One of my men will pack your things. You won't have to go back to that apartment. I need to. No. Firm. You don't need to do anything except let me handle this. That's what protection means, Mara. Letting me take care of the details. And just like that, my life stopped being my own. The apartment Dante moved me into wasn't an apartment at all. It was a fortress disguised as luxury. 23rd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows with bulletproof glass, he mentioned too casually. Smart locks that required fingerprint access. Security cameras in every hallway. A panic button by the bed that connected directly to his personal line. You'll be safe here, he'd said. as if that made the cage any less confining. That first night, I stood at those windows and watched the city breathe below. Somewhere down there was my old building, my old life. The version of me who'd scrubbed tables and counted pennies. She felt like a stranger now, someone I'd been in another lifetime. The apartment had 2 bedrooms. He'd kept that promise at least. Mine was decorated in soft grays, and that blue he'd mentioned, with a bed so comfortable it felt obscene. Everything was new. Everything was expensive. Everything was chosen by someone who'd studied me like a textbook and knew exactly what I'd never let myself want. I hated how much I loved it. Sleep didn't come easily. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every sound made me jump. I kept thinking about the van, about men watching my old building, waiting for a woman who'd never come home. Morning arrived too bright. Sunlight flooding through windows I hadn't learned to close properly. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from an unknown number. Good morning. Breakfast is in the kitchen. Eat. I'll be there at noon. D commands, not requests. Even his texts felt like ownership, but I was hungry. Starving, actually. And the kitchen was stocked like someone had robbed a gourmet grocery store. Fresh fruit. Real coffee. Not the instant kind. Bread that looked homemade. I made toast because it was simple, because complicated felt dangerous somehow. The coffee was perfect. Of course it was perfect. Everything in this gilded cage was perfect except me. I was exploring, trying to understand the boundaries of my new prison. When I heard the lock disengage, my heart jumped into my throat until Dante walked in, looking unfairly good in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater. Casual, like he belonged here more than I did. 2 men flanked him. Security. Always security. You ate, he said, noting the coffee mug in my hand. Approval in his voice, like I was a child who'd completed a basic task. You told me to. And you listened. That's progress. He dismissed his guards with a gesture. They disappeared into the hallway, the door locking behind them with a soft click that sounded like finality. We were alone. Dante moved through the space with easy familiarity, checking windows, adjusting things that didn't need adjusting, marking territory. How did you sleep? He asked. I didn't. That'll improve. Your body needs time to adjust. He turned to face me, and the morning light did devastating things to his features. We need to discuss some practicalities, like how I'm your prisoner, like how we're going to keep you alive. No rise to the bait, just patient correction. My driver will take you anywhere you need to go, within reason, with security. I don't need a driver. I can take the bus. No. Sharp. Final. You don't take the bus. You don't walk alone. You don't go anywhere without protection. That's not negotiable, Mara. I set down my coffee cup with more force than necessary. So, I'm just supposed to sit here? Do nothing? Be nothing? You're supposed to let me handle the danger while you figure out what you want to be. He closed the distance between us, and I refused to step back, refused to show fear. You wanted college. Here. He pulled a tablet from his bag, held it out. Online courses. Pick whatever interests you. I've already set up the accounts. I stared at the tablet like it was a snake. You can't just... I can. I did. The question is whether you'll use it. He set it on the counter between us. You wanted to learn programming, graphic design, business? It's all there. Every resource you never had access to. Bought with what? Your guilt? Your need to control everything? Bought with money I have and you need. Does the motivation matter if the result is the same? His voice remained infuriatingly calm. You can refuse out of pride and spend your days staring at walls. Or you can use what I'm offering and become whoever you want to be. Under your supervision, with your permission, with my protection. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing, something flickered in his expression. Frustration, maybe, or amusement. You're determined to see this as captivity. Because that's what it is. Then why did you smile when you saw the coffee this morning? His voice dropped, intimate and knowing. Why did you run your hand along the bedroom wall last night, testing the texture? Why did you stand at those windows for 20 minutes just looking? Heat rushed to my face. He'd been watching. Of course he'd been watching. Because you're finally safe, he continued. Because for the first time in years, you're not terrified about next month's rent. Because some part of you recognizes that this, he gestured around us, is better than what you had. Better doesn't mean right. No. But it means something. He pushed off the counter, suddenly close enough that I could smell that cedar scent again. I'm not asking you to be grateful, Mara. I'm asking you to be smart, to survive while I handle the threats you can't see. And when those threats are gone, when Marcus's mess is cleaned up, what happens to me then? His hand lifted, cupping my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything he represented. Then we'll see what you've become, who you want to be, and we'll negotiate from there. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I told you I was selfish, that I wanted to keep you. That hasn't changed. But I'm not a monster, Mara. If keeping you means destroying who you are, then there's no point. Pretty words from a man who tracks people and buys their compliance. Yes. No denial. I'm a contradiction. Get used to it. He stepped back, and I could breathe again. Could think through the fog his proximity created. I have meetings today, he said, returning to business mode with dizzying speed. My number is programmed into your phone. You need something. You call. You want to go somewhere. You call. You feel unsafe. You press that panic button. I feel unsafe now, I said quietly. That stopped him. He turned back, something raw crossing his face. Because of me? Because of everything. This apartment, the guards, the tablet full of opportunities I'm supposed to be grateful for. You. I wrapped my arms around myself. Because 3 days ago I was nobody, and now I'm... What? Your project? Your possession? I don't even know what to call this. Dante was quiet for a long moment. His voice carried weight I hadn't heard before. My father told me once that power is knowing exactly how much force to apply. Too little, and you lose control. Too much, and you destroy what you're trying to protect. What does that have to do with me? Everything. He moved to the door, then paused. I'm trying to protect you, Mara. I'm trying to give you what you need, but I've never... He stopped, jaw tightening. I've never tried to protect something without breaking it first. So if I'm using too much force, you need to tell me, because I can't see the damage from where I stand. The admission felt like more than he'd intended to give. Vulnerability from a man who wore power like armor. What if I told you to let me go? I asked. Right now. What if I said this was too much? Then I'd tell you no. Honest. Brutal. Because your safety matters more than your comfort. Because there are men watching for any sign that my protection has weakened. Because if you walk out that door, you die. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but soon. So, I have no choice. You have every choice within these walls, but leaving isn't one of them. Not yet. He opened the door, his guards materializing instantly. Use the tablet. Order whatever you need. Clothes, books, anything. My assistant will handle it. I'll be back tonight. Dante? Yes? I didn't know what I wanted to say. Thank you. I hate you. Please don't leave me alone in this beautiful cage. Nothing. I finally whispered. He studied me for a moment, something unreadable in those dark eyes. Then he was gone, the door locking behind him with that same soft final click. I was alone in a palace that felt like a tomb, the days blurred together in a strange rhythm. Dante appeared and disappeared like a tide. Sometimes at dawn, sometimes late at night. He brought food I didn't ask for. Books he thought I'd like. He'd sit in the living room while I pretended to watch television, working on his laptop, conducting business in quiet phone calls that hinted at violence I didn't want to understand. He never touched me beyond those brief, devastating moments. A hand on my face, fingers brushing mine when passing me coffee. But his presence filled the apartment like smoke, impossible to escape even when he wasn't there. I started using the tablet out of boredom more than gratitude, programming courses that actually made sense, design software I'd never dreamed of accessing. And yes, I smiled when I figured out a particularly difficult concept. Yes, I felt something dangerously close to excitement when I completed my first real program. Dante noticed everything. You're good at this, he said one evening. looking over my shoulder at code I'd written. Better than good. Natural. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm satisfied. He sat beside me on the couch, closer than necessary. I knew what you were capable of. I'm just glad you're finally seeing it too. Because you gave me no choice, because you're finally safe enough to try. His hand covered mine on the keyboard. Do you understand yet? This is what I wanted for you. Time, space, opportunity, and control. Don't forget control. I never forget that part. His fingers threaded through mine. But tell me honestly, are you miserable? The question caught me off guard. I wanted to say yes, wanted to maintain my anger, my resentment, my conviction that this was wrong. But I wasn't miserable. Confused, yes. Frustrated by boundaries I couldn't cross. Scared of what I was becoming in this golden cage. But not miserable. I'm learning things, I said carefully. Creating things. That doesn't make this right. No. But it makes it bearable. His thumb traced patterns on my palm. And maybe, eventually, it'll make it something else entirely. What else could it possibly be? He looked at me with an intensity that stole my breath. Whatever we decide it is, the moment stretched between us, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. I should pull away, should maintain distance, should remember that this man had taken my freedom and called it protection. But his hand was warm in mine. His eyes held something that looked almost like hope. And I was so tired of fighting every moment. I'm going to kiss you, he said quietly. Not a question, a warning. Dante, if you don't want this, say no. I'll stop. I'll leave. But I need to know if what I see in your eyes is real or if I'm imagining it. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the line. The moment where this stopped being captivity and became something else. Something I couldn't take back. I don't know what you see, I whispered. Then let me show you. His lips met mine softly, carefully, like I was something precious that might break. The kiss was nothing like I expected. No force, no demand. Just warmth and barely restrained hunger, and a gentleness that made my chest ache. I kissed him back before I could think better of it, before logic could override the want that had been building despite everything. My hand found his shirt, gripping fabric, pulling him closer. He made a sound, half groan, half surrender, and deepened the kiss. His hand slid into my hair, cradling my head, and suddenly gentle wasn't enough. The kiss turned desperate, consuming. Years of loneliness and touch starvation pouring out of me into this moment, with a man who was all wrong in every possible way. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante pressed his forehead to mine. This changes things, he said, voice rough. I know, I won't be able to keep my distance anymore. Won't be able to pretend this is just protection. I know, I said again, because what else was there to say? Mara. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. I meant what I said. You're mine now. Not as property, not as a prisoner, as something I'll defend with everything I have. That's terrifying. Yes. He kissed me again, softer this time. But you're not running. Where would I go? Anywhere. Everywhere. I'd find you, but you could try. His hand cupped my face. But you're not going to, are you? I should. Every instinct for self-preservation screamed at me to run from this man, this feeling, this impossible situation, but I stayed. No, I whispered against his lips. I'm not going anywhere. His smile was fierce and possessive and filled with dark promise. Good, because now the real negotiations begin. Everything changed after that kiss, and yet nothing changed at all. Dante still disappeared for hours, conducting business I didn't ask about, still returned with tension in his shoulders and shadows in his eyes, still surrounded himself with armed men who treated him like a king, and me like something fragile they'd been ordered to protect. But now when he came home, because that's what it had become, home, he touched me, casual brushes in passing, his hand at the small of my back when we moved through rooms, fingers threading through mine while we sat in silence, him working on his laptop, me absorbed in coding exercises that were finally starting to make sense. And he kissed me. God. He kissed me like I was air and he'd been drowning. 2 weeks passed in this strange new rhythm. I stopped fighting the boundaries quite so hard. Started accepting that the driver wasn't a jailer but protection. That the security wasn't imprisonment, but necessity. I even started to believe him when he said I was safe. That should have been my first warning. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything unraveled. I was deep into a programming project, so focused I didn't hear the apartment door open. Didn't register danger until Dante's voice cut through my concentration, sharp, commanding, nothing like the gentle tone he used with me. Mara. Bedroom. Now. I looked up. He stood in the doorway with 4 of his men, all of them armed, all of them wearing expressions that made my blood run cold. This wasn't my Dante, the one who brought me coffee and kissed my forehead when he thought I was sleeping. This was the other one, the dangerous one, the Mafia boss who built empires on violence. What's happening? Now. No room for argument. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. Fear spiked through my chest. Dante, they found you. 3 words that stopped my heart. Not here, not yet, but they're coming. I need you safe while I handle this. The men from the van. The ones hunting for Marcus's theft. They'd finally lost patience. I ran to the bedroom, every instinct screaming danger. Behind me, I heard Dante giving orders in rapid-fire Italian, his first language emerging under stress. The lock engaged with a click that sounded like a death knell. Silence fell. Heavy. Oppressive. I pressed my ear to the door, straining to hear anything. Footsteps. Voices too low to distinguish words. Then nothing. Minutes crawled by like hours. My phone sat on the nightstand, Dante's number on speed dial, the panic button app glowing red and ready, but he'd told me to stay, to trust him. So I waited. The gunshot shattered the silence like breaking glass. I bit back a scream, hand flying to my mouth. More shots. Return fire. Shouting in multiple languages. The sounds of violence I'd only heard in movies, now terrifyingly real and happening just beyond my door. Then quiet again. Worse than the noise. Because quiet meant someone had won, and I didn't know who. Mara. Dante's voice muffled through the door. It's me. Open up. My hands shook so badly I could barely work the lock. When I finally got it open, Dante stood there. Alive. Whole, but with blood on his shirt that might not be his. His eyes were wild, adrenaline and violence still coursing through him. Are you hurt? I grabbed his arms, searching for wounds. Not my blood. He pulled me against him, his heart hammering against my ear. It's over. They're gone. Gone as in dead. No hesitation. No remorse. They came for you. Tried to breach the building. My men handled it. I should have been horrified. Should have recoiled from this man who spoke about death so casually, but all I felt was relief that he was alive. That I was alive. That whatever danger had been lurking finally showed its face and lost. We need to leave, Dante said, already moving. This location is compromised. I have another property, more secure. Pack what you need. 5 minutes. But 5 minutes, Mara. We don't have time for discussion. I grabbed essentials in a daze. Laptop, clothes, the few personal items I'd accumulated. Dante was on his phone, coordinating in that clipped tone that meant people jumped when he spoke. His men moved through the apartment with practiced efficiency, clearing evidence, securing exits. The building's private elevator took us down to a garage I'd never seen. Armored SUVs waited, engines running. Dante put me in the middle vehicle, sandwiched between security, and climbed in beside me. Where are we going? I asked as we pulled out into traffic. My house. He took my hand, thumb rubbing circles on my palm, a gesture that had become familiar. Comforting. My actual home. Not a safe house. Not a property. Home. Why now? Because I'm done hiding what you are to me. He turned to face me fully, Those men came for you because they thought you were leverage, a weakness they could exploit. They were right. You are my weakness, but you're also my strength, and I'm finished pretending otherwise. The drive took us out of the city, into hills where houses became estates, and estates became fortresses. Dante's home sat behind gates and walls and security checkpoints that made my previous apartment look like a child's toy. But inside, it was different than I expected. Yes, it was massive. Yes, everything screamed wealth and power, but it also felt lived in. Books scattered across tables, art that looked chosen for love rather than investment, a kitchen that showed signs of actual use. My mother decorated most of it, Dante said, watching me take it all in. Before she died, I haven't changed much. It was the first personal thing he'd ever told me. The first crack in the armor. I didn't know you lost her. Cancer. He set down my bag, ran a hand through his hair. She would have liked you. Would have said I was too rough with you, too controlling. She would have been right. Probably. A ghost of a smile. But she also would have understood why. My father taught me that what you love, you protect. What you claim, you defend. She tried to soften those edges, but he shrugged. Some things are too deeply ingrained. I moved closer to him, drawn by vulnerability I'd never seen before. Tell me about them. Your parents. So he did. We sat in his living room while afternoon bled into evening, and he told me stories. His father, ruthless and brilliant, who built an empire from nothing. His mother, gentle but fierce, who loved a dangerous man and made him human. How they'd taught him contradictory lessons. Be hard, be kind, trust no one, love completely. They sound complicated, I said. They were. But they loved each other impossibly. Even when it was dangerous, even when it made no sense, he pulled me closer, and I went willingly. I used to think that kind of love was weakness. Now I think I was wrong about a lot of things. His lips found my temple. You've changed me, Mara. Made me question rules I thought were absolute. Like not getting attached to the women you're protecting. Like thinking protection and possession were the same thing. He tilted my face up to his. I've been doing this wrong. Trying to keep you safe by keeping you small. Contained. But that's not what you need. What do I need? Space to grow. Freedom to choose. Trust that you can handle more than I give you credit for. His thumb traced my bottom lip. I've been so focused on the cage being comfortable that I forgot you never wanted a cage at all. Tears pricked my eyes. You're saying you'll let me go? God, no. His laugh was rough. I'm saying I'll make the cage bigger. Give you room to breathe while keeping you safe. Let you have opinions about your own protection instead of just deciding everything for you. That's growth, I suppose. It's terrifying is what it is. He kissed me softly. I'm not good at compromise, Mara. Not good at sharing control. But for you, I'll try. Why? I pulled back to see his face. Why me? You could have anyone. Someone who fits your world. Someone who understands because you're real. Simple. Devastating. Everyone else in my life wants something. Power, money, protection. You just wanted to survive, to be left alone, to have enough. His hands framed my face, and when I gave you more, you didn't grab for it. You questioned it, fought it, made me work for every inch. I'm still fighting it. I know. It's one of the things I love most about you. The word hung between us, love. He'd said it so casually, like it didn't change everything. Dante, I know it's too soon. I know I've done everything wrong. I know you have every reason to tell me to go to hell. His forehead pressed to mine, but I look at you, and I see my future. See something worth being better for. And I'm not fool enough to let that go just because the timing's wrong or the circumstances are insane. I should have been scared. Should have run from declarations that felt like chains disguised as promises. But I'd been running my whole life, from poverty, from hopelessness, from a future that held nothing but more of the same. And here was a man offering me something different. Dangerous and complicated and absolutely wrong in every rational way, but also real, present. Wholly committed in a way no one had ever been for me. I don't love you. I said, and watched something flicker in his eyes. Pain, quickly masked. Not yet. But I could. If you keep your promises, if you give me room to breathe, if you remember I'm a person, not a possession, I can do that. His voice was rough. I will do that. And we need to talk about what happens next. Really talk. Not you deciding and me accepting. Agreed. Starting with what you found, what Marcus stole. The reason any of this happened. I pulled back, needing space to think clearly. I deserved to know everything. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, moved to a safe I hadn't noticed, and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, account numbers, photographs. Marcus didn't steal money, he said. He stole evidence. Proof of corruption that went all the way to the top of the city. Police, judges, politicians. People who were using my organization to launder their dirty money while pretending to fight crime. I stared at the papers. This is enough to bring down half the city's leadership. Marcus was going to sell it to the highest bidder. Use it to buy his way out. Dante's jaw tightened. He was family. I would have let him leave if he'd just asked. But he chose betrayal instead. And the people who were after me? Corrupt officials who wanted the evidence destroyed. They thought Marcus gave it to you before he died. He closed the folder. I've been using it to negotiate, to ensure your safety, to make it clear that if anything happens to you, everything goes public. So I'm leverage, still. No, fierce, final. You were leverage when I didn't know you, when you were just a name. Now you're... He stopped, searching for words. Now you're everything. And this? He gestured to the folder. I'm releasing it tomorrow, all of it. Letting it burn whoever it burns. You'll make enemies. I already have enemies. What I need is you, safe, without this hanging over our heads. The weight of what he was saying hit me. You're giving up leverage, power. For me. Yes, that's insane. Probably. He smiled, and it transformed his face. But you make me want to be better than what I am. Want to build something clean instead of just managing the dirt. I looked at this man, this beautiful, dangerous, impossible man, and saw something I'd never expected to see. Hope, not just for me, but for both of us. For a future that wasn't just survival, but actually living. Okay? I said softly. Okay? Let's try. Really try. Not protection and possession, but partnership. Equals figuring out how to make this work. His smile widened. Equals might be pushing it. I'm still going to be possessive and overprotective and controlling. And I'm still going to fight you on it. I'm counting on it. He pulled me close again, and this time I melted into him. But we'll figure it out together. I'll give you space. You'll give me patience. We'll both probably fail spectacularly. Sounds perfect, I said against his chest, and somehow, impossibly, it did. The months that followed weren't easy. Dante released the evidence, and the city erupted. Arrests, resignations. His organization took hits from rivals who saw the chaos as opportunity. There were threats, close calls, nights when he came home with that dangerous edge and I had to remind him I wasn't fragile. But there were good moments, too. He enrolled me in university, real classes, real degree. Gave me space to build my own life within the protection he insisted on. Let me make decisions about our future, instead of just announcing them. We fought. God, we fought. About boundaries and control, and his absolute refusal to ever let me take unnecessary risks. But we also learned to compromise, to see each other as partners instead of captor and captive. I learned about his world. The violence, yes, but also the loyalty. The way he protected people who had nowhere else to turn. The strange honor in what he did, even when it was dark. And he learned about mine, came to my first college presentation, and sat in the back, looking absurdly out of place and intensely proud. Celebrated when I got my first freelance programming job, listened when I talked about dreams that didn't include his world at all. I want to start a nonprofit, I told him one evening, 6 months after everything changed. Use technology to help people like I was. Give them opportunities. Do it. No hesitation. Whatever you need. I'll fund it. I don't want your money for this. I want to build it myself. He smiled. Then I'll be your first client, pay you absurd amounts for mediocre work until you're successful enough to turn me down. You're impossible. And you're brilliant. He kissed me thoroughly. Have I mentioned that I love you? He had. Many times. Until finally, 3 months ago, I'd been able to say it back and mean it completely. Now, standing in his kitchen, our kitchen, making coffee while he worked at the table, I looked at this life we'd built from chaos and thought about how far we'd come. What are you thinking about? Dante asked, not looking up from his laptop. That you were right. Sort of. I usually am. About what specifically? That I needed time, space, safety. I brought him coffee. Black, the way he liked it. But you were wrong too. About? He pulled me onto his lap, arms circling my waist, thinking you could keep me. That I'd belong to you. I touched his face, feeling the rough stubble under my fingers. I don't belong to you, Dante, but I choose you. Every day. That's better. His eyes softened. It is better, harder, but better. Ready for harder? Always. He kissed me slowly. What did you have in mind? I pulled out the test I'd taken that morning. 2 lines, clear and unmistakable. Dante stared at it, expression cycling through shock, fear, and something else. Something that looked like wonder. You're pregnant. I held my breath. I know we didn't plan this. I know your world is dangerous, but nothing. His hand spread across my stomach, protective and possessive and gentle all at once. This is everything. You're not scared? Terrified. Honest. Always honest now. But also, his voice broke slightly. Also sure. About you. About us. About building something better for them. Them? I laughed through sudden tears. It's barely cells at this point. Them, he repeated firmly. Our family. The life we're choosing instead of the one that was chosen for us. I kissed him then, pouring everything into it. Love and fear and hope and certainty. This man who'd tracked me, caged me, and then set me free in all the ways that mattered. I love you, I whispered against his lips. I know. His smile was everything, dangerous and gentle, possessive and freeing. You chose me, remember? Best decision you ever made. Second best, I corrected. First was mailing that tracker to Canada. His laugh filled the kitchen, filled our home, filled the life we'd built from impossible circumstances. And somewhere in the city below, people went about their lives, never knowing that a waitress who'd found a tracker and a mafia boss who'd lost his heart had somehow found each other in the chaos. Some love stories were gentle, quiet, expected. Ours was forged in danger and desperation, built on compromises and complications, shaped by a man who didn't know how to love softly and a woman who refused to be owned. But it was ours, chosen, real, and in the end, that was everything. The city lights sparkled below us as evening fell, and I stood at those windows, the ones that once felt like prison bars, with Dante's arms around me and his child growing inside me, and thought about the woman I'd been, the one who'd scrubbed tables and counted pennies and believed she'd never be more than invisible. She deserved to know she was wrong, that sometimes the tracker you find under your car leads